Hello, very good evening. Finally, we do something called a return type. My name is Dr. Shanbadi. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe the channel, hit that bell icon so you receive these tutorials and notifications regularly. Let's begin. Finally, we do something called a return type. Let me show an example right here and there. A return type basically means we use a word called return, 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 and we, for example, return something. In this case, let's just return num variable, $num. Okay. Now, whatever addition it did to num, it will return this variable. Now, what is return? If you're coming from again Java or C++, we use return types in those languages as well with something called void or a data type instead of void. However, in PHP, there is no void word used as a return type. Within PHP, we do not need to write void or any return type in function name declaration. However, you do need to write return a statement. So, return basically means that once this method executes, it will return a value. In simple terms, it will reply. It will give you an answer. It will give you a feedback. Okay, so what feedback? It depends on you, whatever you write in the code. Okay, so return basically is a way of getting a feedback from the method that whatever actions I asked you to perform, did you perform it correctly or not? Or whatever actions I need to do, or whatever the answer is, whatever the reply is, give me a return value. Okay, so return basically means receiving an answer, and once you require a function in declaration, it needs an argument, means you are required to give an argument. If you write a return, that basically means once this function executes, it will return a value, and because it will return a value at the receiving end, we need to be receiving answer. So for example, let me just give it R1, answer 1 is equal to add 5. So now what we've done here is we have received an answer. Same thing, I've asked you to go and buy chips. I give you $5. So for example, $5 is given to you, you go and buy chips, and then I've told you to return the chips to me. So you go and you return the pack of chips to me. So this is what we return in the code. So because I've told you to return the chips for me, once you return and do your task, I need someone to collect those chips as well. So this is like a receiving and receiving collection. So because you asked a method to go and perform a task and then return the answer to me, so that method will go, it will perform a task and then return something back to you. So at the calling end, you need to receive that value. You need to be there to receive the reply. So in order to do that, we receive the reply in this variable, and then we can use this variable to print the value. For example, echo reply of add 5 function. Okay, and then $R1, hit a semicolon, sorry, control semicolon. Okay, again let me just use BR here with a backslash, just like that. Let's be decent with HTML5, and then now what basically means that once this method is executed, it will return a value. We save that value in a variable. We are receiving that value, we save it in a variable, and we print that variable later on. So if I hit right, press S, reply of that add 5 function is 15. Okay, so this variable has a 15 function in it. Similarly, again I can add a return value here as well, return return, for example, $num semicolon, and then at this point I can again use the same thing, I guess, control C, I come back here and I need to receive it. Okay, so but instead of receiving this thing, what we can do here is close this, use a dot add 6 method, and I give it a dollar, for example, value, or instead let's just use value 1. Yeah, okay. So now what we did here is that let me just increase its size so this appears online. So we used echo statements, reply. Instead of saving the answer in a variable, we directly use the methods and printed the variable. So dot is again a connection operator, add 6 is basically a method. So what we did here is we received the answer directly with a string. So whatever answer is sent to us, will now be attached to a string and printed on our browser. This is another way of receiving an answer. So if I come back here, the value is, I think this is not 16, control S, I come back here, and now the reply of add 5 is 22. In fact, add 6, SIX6 is 22. I save it, come back here, receive it. Okay. So why it is 22? Because the first time it executed, it added 6 to this 10. Okay. So now when it goes and executes it for the second time, that's value 1 is now 16, and then it adds another value to that thing, 22. Simple as that. So this is what we do. So now even if you print value 1 again, you will get that 22 value, because pass by reference means it has actually tempered the original variable. And the return type basically means that it returns a value, and it can be a string, it can be an integer, it can be a character, it can be a float. Whatever data you want to return will basically be returned in your function. The only rule for return is that it has to be the last statement. If you write anything after the return, it will not get executed. For example, this string, if I come here, it's not executed. For one main reason, because return basically means that whenever you reach to the return point, just return the value. So it will immediately exit the function. It's more like a break. When we use a break in switch statement or for loops, it will break the execution of that function immediately. Return the answer to its calling point. So wherever we called this function, the answer will be given. So whatever statements we write after the return statement will not be executed. That's the thing that we need to remember. If you do this in Java, you will get an error, a catastrophic error. However, because the statements are not reachable, so Java will give you non-reachable error. In PHP, I believe PHP is generous enough to not create a problem for it. So if you refresh, there is no error. However, this string is not being printed at this point or neither this point, because when it reaches to return, it just returns to that point. So of any statement you write after return might not get executed. So obviously you can write return within an if condition as well, that if a certain condition matches, return it. That can also be done, and then you can write statements afterwards. So I can write if, for example, $num is equals to 16, okay, then return a value, and I can write so in this case, or for example 10, okay, in this case, if this condition becomes true, only then it will return a value. Else we can write any other statements here, else echo string, and then it can have more statements here as well, okay, echo more state statements after return, okay. So now if I press S here, back into my code, refresh, and you see there's some few gibberish come here. Blah 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 blah. Let me just write a BR here. That's why we tend to use BR more commonly in PHP, because we need to print the outputs on a new line. So if I come back here, hit a refresh, and now you see this is a string here, because the first time it will execute, it prints a 15 string, okay, this is string variable. So the value of add by 6 is basically not it's 16, not 10. Okay. So hopefully you understand this. Return we tend to use with an if or as a last statement. It returns a value, pass by reference, pass by value should also be clear. Any confusion, anything you don't understand, kindly leave the comments down below, and I will be happy to explain. Thank you very much for watching. This is Dr. Zishan Bhatti. See you around.